All right, let's jump right into this one. Welcome back to our latest explainer. Today, we are completely pulling apart the anatomy of a truly terrifying story, the legend of room number 13. You know the trope, right? It's that classic claustrophobic hotel narrative where anyone who checks into a specific room, well, they never actually check out. We're going to break down the mechanics of the haunting, the incredible psychological tension, and the exact minute-by-minute timeline of this terror. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this setup. I want you to literally put yourself in this guy's shoes for a second. Imagine the scene. It's the absolute dead of night. It is just pouring rain, lightning is violently tearing across the pitch black sky, and our guy, a weary traveler named Rahul, finally stumbles into an isolated hotel. He is totally exhausted, just desperate for a place to crash. But there's a massive catch. The receptionist, who is clearly on edge with a trembling voice, tells him the hotel is totally booked. Well, booked except for one single room, room number 13. Rahul takes it, obviously, but as he grabs the key, the receptionist drops this absolutely chilling warning. If anyone knocks after midnight, do not open it. Boom. A strict rule has been set. And, in horror, rules are basically just made to be broken.
And this brilliantly illustrates the chronological suspense of the whole story. The narrative here maps out as a literal ticking clock that completely traps Rahul and honestly traps us as the audience inside that room. We start with that late night arrival, which gives us a super brief, totally false sense of security. But everything, and I mean everything, pivots around midnight. That struck of 12 a.m. triggers this rigid survival window leading right up to a 1 a.m. deadline. It's a classic, high-stakes countdown scenario. So let's see exactly what goes down when the hands of the clock finally align.
So Rahul is just chilling in his room. Up until this exact point, the place seems perfectly normal. Just your standard, run-of-the-mill, quiet hotel room. But the absolute second the clock strikes 12, the entire atmosphere shifts. Heavy, deliberate footsteps start echoing down the hallway. They get closer and closer and closer to his room. And then they just stop, dead in their tracks, right outside his door. Then the heavy knocking starts. Knock, knock, knock. Rahul, probably freaking out a bit, calls out into the hallway. Who is there? But instead of getting an answer, the knocking completely stops, plunging the room back into this just dreadful, suffocating silence. And then, that silence is shattered by a voice. It's a woman, sounding incredibly desperate and terrified, literally begging from the other side of that thin wooden door. Please, open the door, help me. Now think about it. Human instinct naturally dictates that, hey, we should help someone in distress, right? But Rahul is suddenly forced to remember that strict, terrifying warning from the receptionist. In a totally classic horror survival moment, he actually makes the crucial choice to refuse entry. He shouts back, "No, I will not open the door." It's the ultimate test of the haunting's rules. While the moment he refuses, absolute hell breaks loose. The escalation here is just rapid and violently intense. That desperate pleading knocking, it suddenly transforms into aggressive, violent pounding on the door. The woman's sad plea for help suddenly drops into this guttural, demonic growl demanding, "Let me in." Inside the room, the sensory overload goes into overdrive. The lights start flickering wildly on and off. And as Rahul slowly, dreadfully turns his gaze toward the mirror, he realizes he isn't alone. Reflected right there in the glass is a horrifying apparition. A terrifying woman wearing a white sari. The ghost didn't even need him to open the door, guys. She was already inside. So the crucial point is how direct this confrontation gets. Rahul, who is absolutely paralyzed by fear at this point, stammers out, "Who are you?" And the ghost delivers a direct, completely inescapable threat. She says, "I died in this room, and now no one who comes here leaves alive." This fundamentally shifts the entire stakes of the story. She isn't just trying to spook him. She is claiming the territory, and she is claiming his life. I want you to really think about that for a second. How would you react if you were standing right there in Rahul's shoes, staring at this entity making that kind of promise? Literally chilling. Honestly, Rahul does what literally any of us would do in that nightmare situation. He bolts for the door. But as he aggressively grabs the handle, the door inexplicably locks itself from the inside. At the exact same time, the room's temperature just plummets. We're talking dropping to freezing cold in a matter of seconds. And as he frantically turns around, an insane visual jump scare is waiting for him. Scrawled across the wall, looking entirely like fresh blood, is this terrifying warning: leave before 1 a.m. And all the while, the ghost is just laughing. She's actively mocking his futile attempts to escape, telling him he's going to be staying there forever.
Talk about being plunged into absolute chaos. He is totally trapped, the door is deadlocked, the room is literally freezing him to the bone, and that clock is just relentlessly ticking closer and closer to the 1 a.m. deadline. Finally, it hits exactly 12:59 a.m. He has less than 60 seconds left. The ghost is gleefully taunting him, saying he cannot escape. Fueled by what I can only imagine is pure adrenaline and absolute primal terror, Rahul throws his entire body weight into the door. He violently smashes it open with a massive crash, bursts out into the hallway, and just flees the hotel into the dark night, seemingly surviving this insane supernatural ordeal.
Now, what's really interesting about this twist is that it doesn't happen until the very next morning. Rahul, having somehow barely survived the night, returns in the safety of daylight to confront the receptionist. He marches up and starts to say, "Last night in room number 13, but the receptionist, looking genuinely, utterly confused and shocked, drops a total mind-bending bombshell. He says, "Sir, our hotel never had a room number 13.
Just let that sink in for a second. No room 13. To prove he isn't losing his mind, Rahul turns around to look back at the actual hotel building itself, and what he sees basically defies all logic. The entire fourth floor, the floor where room 13 was supposedly located, is completely missing. It is just gone, nowhere to be found. And in that moment of pure jaw-dropping disbelief, echoing from somewhere in the distance, he hears that exact same horrifying laugh from the night before. And it's followed by the ghost's voice echoing one final, terrifying promise. "I will meet you again." Effectively proving that for Rahul, the nightmare is far, far from over. Which brings us to the end of today's explainer, and it leaves us with a seriously provocative final question. Was Rahul telling the truth? Did he genuinely step into some kind of haunted, alternate dimension that just vanished into thin air by morning? Or was the combination of the raging storm, his total physical exhaustion, and his own sheer panic the perfect recipe for a terrifying hallucination? The source material leaves it masterfully ambiguous, which is what makes it so good. I really want you to analyze the evidence we've structured here today. What are your theories? Think about what you would have done in his shoes. Share your thoughts, and be sure to join us next time as we continue to break down and explain the most fascinating and terrifying stories out there. Catch you on the next one.